The Texas Longhorn and the American Cowboy are two of the most enduring symbols of the Old West. They're the big reason why Fort Worth earned the nickname Cowtown. Now, the romance and mystique of the Cowboys and the cattle drives remains in Fort Worth with the Fort Worth Herd. With our diverse group of cowboys, authentic clothing, and 15 very impressive Texas Longhorn steers, the Fort Worth Herd is the world's only daily cattle drive. Fort Worth owes much of its success to the cattle industry and its impact on our growth and prosperity. Since June of 1999, twice daily, cattle drives are a celebration of our cowboy heritage and a reminder of where we came from. The first herd of cattle was driven in 1690 northward from Mexico to this land that would become known as Texas. The early missions and ranchers would not survive all the elements, but the Texas Longhorn would. The Texas Longhorn was fashioned entirely by nature, right here in North America, stemming from ancestors that were the first cattle to set foot on American soil, almost 500 years ago. The Texas Longhorn is hardy, aggressive, and adaptable, well suited to the hardships of life on the range of the southwestern United States. They survived as a primitive animal on the most desolate ranges. Survival of the fittest. A new appetite for beef developed in the north, and the need for money in Texas created a new cattle market that never existed before. Translating wild cattle into hard cash was an ambitious struggle between man, beast, and the elements. From this grew the romantic legends of the Western cowboy.
Good morning, boys and girls. How are y'all? Y'all know what this is? It's a whip. That's right. Y'all know what we use it for? We don't use it to whip our cattle. We don't whip our horses with it. We use it just to make that noise to help control our cattle. This whip is made out of braided leather. This part right here is the handle. Underneath that leather is a piece of wood. You get past that piece of wood, it gets real flexible. All the way down to this end, it comes a single piece of leather. It's called the fall. This little piece of string right here, that's called the popper. That's what makes all the noise. It won't make any noise when you hit the ground or hit something with it. What it does, it moves through the air and changes direction so fast that that's what makes that noise. It's kind of like lightning. So we use this to control our cattle, get them back under control when we have a stampede. Y'all know what a stampede is? Yes. Y'all ever been in a stampede? Yes. I bet you have. What about at the end of the day when the school bell rings and you're in a hurry to get home? Oh, yes. I bet you're in a stampede to get out of there. So if y'all will, put your longhorns on for me, just like this right here. Now stomp your feet on them bleachers really loud. Stop. Now if them cattle was stampeding, y'all think they'd stop when I yell stop like that? No. They sure wouldn't. They'd run right over me, wouldn't they? That's kind of what a stampede sounds like when them cattle's running across the ground. So most of the time the stampede would happen at night. Something would spook the cattle, lightning or something, the coyotes hollering. Maybe the cook was banging his pans when he was washing the pans up or something. So what they did was when they bed down to go to sleep at night, they would tie their fastest horse up pretty close to where they were sleeping at so they could get to him really quick. And they would have a guy out there watching the cattle, one drover. They call that night hawking. And they would do it in shifts 2 or 3 hours at a time so everybody could get some sleep. So that nighthawk guy, he's out there watching the cattle, and all of a sudden they have a stampede. He hollers, stampede! All them drovers jump up, they run to their horse and get their horse all saddled up. They run out there to help him. there's going to be one of those longhorns that's in the very front. They call that the lead steer. So what they do is the very first drover will run up to that lead steer. And what he'll do is he'll crack his whip right there beside his ear. And that annoys him. So what he does is he'll start to turn off to the right, away from that noise. All the other drovers will follow right in behind him. They'll be cracking their whips and doing the same thing. All those steers will follow that lead steer, and they'll all start turning until the front meets the back. And then they'll have them going in a big circle. So when you're at school and you have to run around the gym or the track or something, what happens after you run 2 or 3 laps around there? You get tired, that's exactly right. Well, the same thing happens to these cattle. They keep going around in a circle and they start to get tired. So what happens? They start slowing down. And the next thing you know, you got them back down into a walk. Then you got them under control. Then you can bed them back down for the night. You go get back in your bedroom and go back to sleep. So that's how we control a stampede. We use this whip, we make the noise with it. We don't hit our cattle with it, we don't hit our horses with it. Try our best not to hit ourselves. Thank y'all.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You all nice and warm?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to tell you about another tool we use. Do you know what this is?
Yes.
It's called a spur. Okay, it's pretty simple. It's got the band that goes on your boot. This part here is called the shank. And on the end is a rowel. You notice it spins and the points are real dull. It doesn't hurt him. That's how we communicate with the horse. Okay, so we're roping, we got stuff in our hands. So we're gonna, y'all know what pressure is?
Yes.
Okay, take your finger, put it in your ribs and keep pushing. What happens? You're gonna move away from it, right? That's how we train these horses also. So if I want him to start moving, I just both feet a little bit, get him going. Nice and slow. Want to go faster? Squeeze a little bit. He walks faster. Want him to stop? Take the pressure off. Right? So if I want him to turn to the left, I put pressure with the right spur. He's going to go to the left. Okay? Want him to stop? Take off pressure. I want him to go to the right. I'll take my left spur and put pressure. Release over here. He's going to go to the right. Straighten out. Take the pressure off. He stops. He even has a reverse. You believe me? You want to see it? He's pretty good. He's got 2 speeds in reverse. I'm going to ask him to back up. I'm going to ask him to really back up. Take the pressure off, he stops. Does he look like he's bleeding or upset?
No.
Didn't hurt him, did it? Okay, so imagine back in those days there was no fences, and you are my longhorns, right? You don't want to take your eyes off of them. If I had my back to you, y'all would start separating. So I'm watching my cattle. Down here they're starting to act up. So in order to keep my eyes focused on you, I'm going to collect him, I'm going to put pressure in the left, and we're going to side pass down to the other end. Watch his front feet cross over. Keeping my eyes on you, right? Get on down here, get these guys to stop. Take the pressure off, he stops. You are settled. They're acting up down here. Now I got to go back. So I'm going to ask them to side pass to the left. They say that's where the Texas two-step started, but I don't believe it. Thank you.
When the calf or unbranded steer got reasonably close to the fire, the cowboy shook out his rope to capture it. A calf might be roped for branding in either of 2 ways. Ideally, if very close to the fire, it was roped by the hind legs and dragged to the branding iron.
Walter. Walter is our baby calf that was born on the cattle drive going up the trail. The cattle drives happened mostly in the springtime. There was a lot of green grass up, so pulling them to the branding fire didn't hurt them, plus they got tough skin. Do you see the difference between catching it by the neck and catching it by the back legs here? The difference is I can control it better by catching it by the back legs. If I could caught it by the neck, it'd still be standing up. It could run into the branding fire, cause prairie fire. It could run around, cut around my horse, got the rope around me, and got me bucked off or whatever. But it doesn't hurt them to drag them like this. Like I said before, they were dragged on grass. Didn't drag them, but maybe 25, 30 feet at the most. But that's the way they did it back in the cattle drive era. Thank y'all for listening.
Cattle drives usually began in the spring after roundup, as grass was available then and the herd could be delivered to its destination in the north before cold weather set in. Livestock from several different owners were usually included in the trail herd. The trail boss obtained documentation from each rancher noting the owner's brand, earmark, and number of cattle. Then all the animals in the drive were branded with the same road brand, regardless of ownership. The use of brands and earmarks to identify domestic cattle is an age-old practice brought by the Spanish. Burning identifying marks into the hides of cattle and cutting a distinctive shaped piece out of one's ear was the most efficient way to mark ownership. When the ranchers were preparing to take a herd of longhorns up the trail, one of the first things they had to do was mark and brand them so they could identify their cattle. In order to brand them, they had to sort or separate them from the rest of the herd. Sorting required a drover on horseback to ride into the herd and find the unbranded animal, known as a maverick, and slowly and quietly bring it to the branding area.
Well, they make that sound pretty simple. 3,000 head of longhorns out here, great big herd, and all I got to do is ride in there and find one. Teachers, you like turning 3,000 kids out in the playground and going to find one. Be a little tough. Now, when you first start off, it's pretty easy because all of them are mavericks. None of them have been branded. So you just ride in, pull one out. And when you get about halfway through, it starts to get a little bit more complicated. And then you got to find those last 2 or 3. That gets pretty tough. So we're going to do this, but you have to be real quiet because these cattle are kind of spooky. They're not real broke. They're not real tame. So if I went in there cracking my whip or working my rope or making a lot of noise, they just scatter and start a stampede. So we're going to ride in real quiet and careful, and we're going to be looking for one that doesn't have a brand. What's he called? Very good. Now I'm going to cheat a little bit because all these cattle have got brands on them already, but I'm going to bring one up to you. You can see what a brand looks like. If I get him to quit scratching his tail fins here. Look, we're going to get 2 for the price of 1 today. Eat it. Real gentle, real quiet. We don't want him real excited or mad or anything. Now, if you look up here on his left hip, way up towards the top of it, you look real close, you'll see a T-bar W brand. Get up. You see it? Way up on the top. That's a T-bar W brand. That would be his ranch brand. That would says he belongs to the T-bar W ranch. So when we got this longhorn to Kansas, whoever owned the T-bar W would get the money for him. Now, once I get him separated and pushed up here, we can't take that hot branding iron and just run out there and poke him with it. We got to do something else first. We're going to show you what we do next.
Once the longhorn was brought to the branding area, it was then roped by 2 drovers. One roped the head, and the other roped the heels, the hind feet. No matter what animal it was or which technique was used, roping was the most